Welcome to the Conscious Rebel podcast, where we discuss topics that can help us become stronger in body, mind, and spirit. I am Lucy, your host. Today, we have a very, very special guest, and her name is Amy Elizabeth. So, Amy, let me have the honor of introduce you a little bit, give a brief summary to your story because I find it to be shocking when I found out about you. Okay, so you were a school teacher, right, back in 2019, and I've heard your story towards the end of 2019, your marriage was dismantling. And in January 2020, your ex-husband left and leaving you with two little kids and pregnant with your third. And we all know what happened in 2020, right? And what was shocking, totally shocking, was that in that year, you made your five-figure month, six-figure month, and you went on to make your $1 million year. And when I heard about that, I was, oh, how is that possible? Like, how is that allowed? That is outrageous. That is shocking. So, did I get your story right?
Thank you so much for having me, Lucy. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, very, very, very close. So I was pregnant. I actually had my son in 2019. So that was my third child that I had in 2019. I had left teaching earlier that year. So in February, March, I had left teaching. And then I did have, went up into five-figure months. And then August of 2019, I had him. And then that whole year, though, my marriage was just falling and falling and falling apart. 2020 January, my ex had left. So I had my two girls, my daughters, and then my 4-month-old baby. And we literally were, it was completely shocking. Like this wasn't something that was expected or anticipated. And I was left with every single bill, there was back payments that hadn't been made. It was a shocking disaster. Like absolutely. I had no idea all of this was going on behind the scenes and that it was the state that we were in. So that month I had less than a 10-figure or a 10K month that month in January of 2020. And I literally was just in cleanup mode. Like I was like, what is going on? My whole family were just kind of like just getting by day by day by day and kind of like, what are we going to do? And then in February, it was the same thing. I was just like really in this big state of surrender. I had my business and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go forward and launch my human design certification that month. And I had a 10K payment come in, like literally out of the blue. And I fell to my knees and I was like, thank God. Like I was praying and praying and praying. I actually remember sitting on my couch with my son looking out our window and I was feeding him and like this payment came in and I was like, oh my God, like I actually fell to my knees. And I was like, I've just been trusting and trusting and trusting. It was just such a moment of faith. And then from there in May of 2020, I had my first six-figure cash month. So I went from the just barely 10K in January to over 110K in May of 2020, which was crazy and fun and exciting and celebratory and all of the things. And then we finished off that year with just over $1 million in cash brought in. So it was insane. There was so much behind the scenes going on that was so heavy and dark and like still difficult to understand. And then at the other end, I was like celebrating and so happy and like the best of the best, you know. And I really that year understood what polarity was, what it meant. Of course, the world had shut down. So again, my kids were homeschooled during that time. It was just everything was crazy, but everything worked. I look back now and I'm like, that was like the best year of my life. Like it's so bizarre.
Yeah, how? I'm sure a lot of people will ask you how. Like the program that you're doing now is how, and you talk about the energy of being obsessed, right? So what is that about? Like, so if people ask you, Amy, how is that possible? How is it possible to go from because it totally destroyed the struggling single mother stereotype. That's what I find absolutely shocking. Not only did you survive, like you thrived, like no one else, right? Like how is that possible? How is that even possible?
I literally, like you just said it. I actually had a moment I remember in January and I was like to my coach, I was like, oh my God, like I'm going to be a single mother and I am a single mother. And like, what my kids are going to grow up. And, you hear all of these stigmas. And I was like, that's me. I am a percentage of the population now. And so are my kids. And then she gave me an opportunity to reframe how I stood for myself. And this was literally a moment that changed everything. She's like, you could be that, or you could defy the odds and you could become the mother that becomes a millionaire, that has freedom, that has time, that has space, that spends time, all of the things that we think a single mom can't do, you can do. But
Mm.
you have to choose that and you have to decide. So the how of that entire year was really setting my focus and my mind on the intention of what I wanted this outcome to be, and who I wanted to become in that process. So, what I was unwilling to do, what I was unwilling to stand for, and what I undoubtedly was standing for. And that was wealth, that was freedom, that was women everywhere, that was mothers, that was, redefining your life, that was redefining identities. Like I stood for all of those. And I moved forward with that focus. And anything that did not match that, I literally like just was in a tunnel and did not see it. Like I would not look at it, I would not entertain it, I would not bring it into my world, into my energy field. And I just really built the momentum of what my intentions were and what I stood for.
So is that practical example you can explain how this works? Because it's like I can understand it intellectually what you're saying, but how does it work in practice, right? Because I'm a single mother too. I am comfortable, but nowhere thriving like you are. So, and I know all these things, the mindset and setting a focus, but when you're actually putting into practice, how does it look like?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it would be more so like the opportunities in the moment. So I
Mm,
believe that thriving and mass amounts of wealth are going to become with who you become in the process. So
mm,
that's where I tangibly focused. So, for example, there was a time where this was a moment where I was like, oh, I would call it like these Jesus walks moments, right? Where I'm like, I am not going to be that version of myself. I'm going to be this version of myself. And I would literally tangibly decide to do that. So, there was a moment where I was on a Facebook Live and
mm.
I was selling a program, I was talking about something, whatever I was doing. And there was someone in his family that literally started posting on my live. And
Wow.
I got off my live and saw these posts, and they were very mean comments, like and not true. And just like I was like, I was mortified. Every cell in my body was like attack, like how dare you? And then say something back. And and I had to really pull back and I had to say, what am I standing for? Is this the standard of that woman? How are we going to respond? What am I going to say? And how am I going to be the bigger person in this scenario?
Mm.
So that was like a tangible moment where I had to become that person in order to be thriving and be a match for the wealth.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's very easy, especially someone that personal come on and attack you, not even random person. And
Yeah,
wow, okay. So really is to be very aware. So you have to have a very clear vision of the kind of woman
extremely.
that you are. And then you have
Yeah,
to
exactly.
make
It
choices
literally,
in every moment.
exactly. Literally every moment. So it was like even celebratory moments. It didn't have to be bad, right? But I
Mm,
remember also it was like, okay, so I had uh
mm,
it was like a celebration, and at that time I wasn't talking about money online either. That whole year until October of 2020 I didn't talk about money online because of the scenario that was going on. So I kept all of the money personal. I didn't talk about it out loud. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna hit $1 million. I was like, this is so exciting. And I was like, something so good. I was like, I'm by myself. I have nobody to celebrate this with. I don't have a partner. I don't have anybody to, be excited about my celebration. I wasn't sharing with my family how well I was doing because I was afraid of judgments. I was afraid of, shame and guilt and all the money stuff. And I had to decide. I was like, you know what? Like, this is an invitation of joy. And if I'm going to be this person, I need to have the conversation and share with my family so I can be myself, so I can share with them, and that I can talk about it online now if I want to talk about it online instead of hiding it. So it's also in the moments of celebration, not just in the bad ones, but who am I going to be? Am I just going to keep it to myself and go kind of like, be sad in my room while I should be happy and celebrating and at least just be free with it, right? I had to step into that version, even in the celebrations.
Yeah, so in every moment, from the very best
Mhm.
to the very good and everything in between.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
so how do people then get a very clear vision of, what they, because there's a lot to talk about being authentic and being, who you truly are, all these kind of talks. But I find sometimes we can get very confused to what our actually authentic self really is, because like you talk about in human design, because of the conditioning and all the rest. So
Mhm.
how do we even get a clarity of our true vision that really get us excited and aligned, like you
You know
said?
what?
I find
That's
alignment is also something probably we have to choose again and again. But what are we aligning to? How do we
mhm,
know, right?
mhm. Yeah, that's such a good question. And, obviously you have an audience of a lot of artists and creatives. So I find that in that stance, there's a version of yourself that is already very free and expressed. And if you were to go into a state of your artistry and creating your art and putting it out into the world, you are in a state of your most authentic self. Now,
Mm,
how do you transfer that being, that state, that creativity, that expression, that authenticity out into the world? So
mm,
it's almost like we are grabbing and we're transmuting. So how do you bring that version of you into your reality of you going to the grocery store, of you having a conversation with your neighbor? How do you own that in every facet of your life? So we want to zone into the places where we are our most authentic and where that comes very easily to us, where we don't have the fears, we don't have the judgments, we don't have, the conditioning that's surrounding us. We're in a state of flow, and we want to grab that version and start to understand where and why we're not being that version of ourselves outside of that safe space.
mm,
Understand the deconditioning, that unsexy work that goes into it, and then begin to start expressing her in those areas. And it really is a ping pong game, because there's going to be a moment when you're like, I am. And then there's going to be a moment where you're like, what happened there? And that's the whole experiment of really figuring it out and giving yourself a lot of grace, because it's not easy and it's not going to be a rip the band-aid off type thing. It's going to be an experiment, and it's going to be, you know, a level where you get really comfortable and authentic at it. And then there's going to be a level above that, and you're going to keep going. Like, that's the process of evolution. But I would say that's the beginning, really understanding of like where you feel the most authentic and aligned in your
mm.
truest version of you, and why aren't you being it out there?
Mm, mm. Yeah, I'm in some of your group programs, right? It's when you did the Bright Friday sale, I just grabbed those opportunities, and I found it has actually been very helpful for me, because in human design, I also understood from learning from you that about the open head centers and all that kind of stuff. I think for artists
Mhm.
and creatives, it's very easy to get inspired by this, inspired by that, and then you want to go everywhere, try out everything. And I learned that I have to come back to more of my like sacral, my divine senses, and also my I'm a manifesting generator. So that response, and I found out that what I really want, like in terms of my art, I want to be I want to be a master. I want to have to achieve mastery with my skills, as the foundation to expressing what I want to express. And I also realized that for a very long time, I did not give myself the permission to really go to that, because I'm probably afraid of unable to achieve it, or don't want to. And if I'm not able to achieve it, then why would I invest all the money in going for that? You know uh and for a long time I didn't even realize that's my issue. I just think, I can do it on my own. And then just through this year, um I realized that especially also looking at your evolution, you know, I actually scroll back all the way to your very first Instagram video. And and I realized, wow, every professional, as athletes is a very clear example. They, if you want to be like top world class, you have to have a coach, a mentor. No one goes it alone, right? And you also talk about you having a mentor. So I thought, you know, if I want to be the kind of artist that I really, really desire to be in, I have to invest in that and believe in myself that I can achieve the level of mastery. And that's like finally this month, actually, I invested in a one-to-one private artist as my mentor. And it felt really, really good. So thank you, Amy.
Oh, congratulations. I'm so happy. Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. And you said like the key word, especially for manifesting generators, is the permission. You guys do not give yourselves the permission because the shoulds. You should do it this way. You should do it this way. You shouldn't do it that way, right? Your true
Yeah.
desires aren't being granted in yourself. And you give yourself enough of a buffer where you're like, oh, it's good enough. But
Mm.
if you, like you just said, you want to step into this level of excellence, this level of mastery in your own world, and you feel the potential there, it's like we have to go with the potential. And that won't always make sense because we're not at our potential yet. We see our potential. So we have to get towards our potential in order to keep growing it or to even become that match for where we see ourselves to be. But we have to let ourselves get there. And that's a process of mentorship. That's a process of practice, experimenting, putting yourself out there, getting it right, getting it wrong, allowing yourself to, again, just learn the authenticity and alignment of you and be good with that.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm learning. And as I feel aligned, if it feels really good. But then again, it's also not an easy process. Like when I look at you and the content that you put out, you can just feel that you are in alignment with you, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so one is, how do we start deconditioning? And then how do we continue to choose alignment? Because it's so easy to not be in alignment, you know, just with like my personal example that I just gave. I still think about, you know, the family I come from. You have to be very frugal and save money for the rainy days in case whatever, you know. And I have to kind of remind myself, okay, if I want to achieve mastery, and I have to trust, like you also talk about trust a lot, trust the things that you need is gonna come to us, be provided for us by
Mm-hmm.
God, you know, the universe, whatever, and we have to trust, right? So I have to constantly remind myself of that. But then still the little voices say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you should really kind of save those money for the rainy days, right? So how do we know what is our alignment and then choose it?
Yeah. Yeah, oh, these are really good questions. So I would say for the first question about the deconditioning, the
Mm.
best thing that I did, and like this is always what I say for people, is we have to build our awareness of, before we understand alignment, what misalignment is for us.
Mm.
So this is that deconditioning process where we're doing something because we think we have to, we think we should, we think there's no other way. We're very
Yeah, yeah.
limited and we put a
Mm.
glass ceiling on, and we begin to understand and feel like, oh, wait, I don't want to do that. I don't like this. Why am I doing this? Oh, I get sick all the time. Oh, I'm so exhausted. Like literally the base of how we're not supposed to be feeling, the vast majority of us are overworked,
Mm.
overrun, exhausted, broke, let down, uninspired, unhealthy, like literally all of those things. So if we just start being like, whoa, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, why? What's causing
Mm.
that? And when
Mm.
we start to realize what's causing it, so when I was teaching, and I had gone back to teaching after having my second daughter, that's literally where I started noticing. I was like, oh my God, like I'm completely broken out. I'm like getting like hives. I'm so tired. I'm stressed. I'm feeling anxious. I'm, like on the go nonstop. We have so many social events. I was like, my body is showing me something. What's misaligned here? I'm overworked and I'm overrun. And then understanding I'm a projector, it's like, oh, of course my body is responding like this. Of course my system is responding like, just like a computer where it's overloaded, it
Mm.
will respond in that way. So we just have to start paying attention to what's not working so
Mm.
that we could start to create the pathways of what is working. So then when we have our roadmap of our human design, we can start to piece together the gap. This doesn't work. this doesn't feel good. This is how I'm supposed to feel. So if this isn't working, what do I need to change and adjust here, even in the tiniest way? Like it could be saying no to a social event is something that for myself, I was like, I got to pull back from that because I don't feel good after. I don't feel good on Monday and I have to go to work still, you know?
Yeah.
So what do I need to do to change that? So it's just literally getting so honest and taking that radical responsibility of misalignment in order to adjust even in the smallest amount to alignment. And that's where the deconditioning comes in, because you're going to be tempted to remain in the conditioned cycle,
Yeah.
because that's a conditioned cycle, right?
Yeah.
So then as we discover alignment, we're going to discover really where we start to feel we're thriving. And like for you, for example, it's the creativity, it's the art, it's the expression, it's putting it out there, it's maybe exploring something new, it's being lit up. So we really want to start listening to our authorities, which is in our body. And we're going to understand that through our design too. There's a number of different authorities, which you would be. So I'm a splenic. I'm not sure if you're emotional or sacral.
Sacral.
Sacral. Okay. So for sacral, right, you're going to be lit up by something. So you're going to want to listen to those responses, and that's what's going to show you and bring you on the path. Now, as we hold trust is a mental game. So this is where we combine so much in human design. It's energetics and it's your mind. Like you cannot let go of that mind, because it's going to be such a strong backbone for you if we adjust the mind to the belief of the alignment. And then from there, everything else can start to follow. And that's where trust is really created in belief. And our belief, and then we start to see the evidence, because our belief, our backbone is so strong. And again, we want to test this in small ways. Like I didn't quit teaching right away until I was like, okay, well, the universe pushed me, but it's not like I was like ripped off the Band-Aid right away. I didn't trust that much. I had to build up my relationship with trust inside of my design.
Yeah. Well, looking at your content, I think, well, it looks so easy for Amy. And look, just from 2019, 2020, in a year, like you went from being a school teacher in 2019, and then here you have $1 million business. It just look easy. Is it really that easy? Or
Yeah.
so is it hard on the mental game? Like what is really like?
Yeah, you know what? Like, thank you for bringing this up, because I forget that it looks easy, and then people say that, and I feel like I'm so like raw and open about it. But I'm also a fifth line, so I think this happens quite frequently. But yeah, no, I had very dark days. I had really hard times, and I really it's not easy at all. That's why a small percentage actually do it. I think I make it, quote unquote, make it look easy, because I actually have the belief of ease in my life. And I developed that as I created this life. So ease is something that has been a determining factor of success for me. Like I feel successful when my life is ease filled. But this always comes with transition. So I am in a relationship now, and we have a blended family. So we moved into a house earlier this year, this home. And that was a really big transition. And to be honest, that really tested my alignment this year, because it was hard. We went from 3 kids to 5 kids, living with my boyfriend for the first time, a brand new house, new finances, a renovation in the backyard, like so many things that were really stretching my capacity of comfort and what I really felt the ease of alignment, and really tested me in bigger ways to expand that ease and how to then create that ease with many more moving pieces. So it doesn't stop, right? It never stops. The challenges continue. So I
Yeah.
want that to be very clear. Even as we're on the path of ease, it's not easy. It is a very big mental game. I really have to, it like an athlete, like you're saying, like it's training. That's why, like, honestly, like my body, my mind, my soul, my connection to energy, my studying of human design, all of that needs to be really interconnected in order for that growth to continue to happen.
So when you talk about this mental game, because I really find the mental game is really the where the battle is. It is actually so much harder than probably many people imagine. The mental game is not actually grinding doing the physical work. The mental game is where the hard work is. So do you find the mental game now that is different to when you just started? So even back in 2019, when you were still teaching, before you went full on in your business, has the kind of mental game changed?
Yeah, so I had to work on the mental game with courage back then. So it was a lot of courage building and the mental strength to be strong enough to be courageous. So that's what it was in the beginning. Even as you said, my first Instagram live, like that was like a courageous moment. Like I swear to God, this is the exact same ring light I have in front of me, and I had my phone on it, and I was like, oh my God, like I put it was back, it was upside down, like it wasn't like the right formatting, and I was just like, just do it, go. But it was like that moment of courage. So it was like the mental game building in the courage. And at this point, it's the mental game to expand a lot of guilt still, a lot of belief that I can expand more, that I can continue to do it my way, that my speed is divinely timed. So it's now the mental game is the belief in um, more fundamentally self-created beliefs that my mind has to align to and believe in, where before it was strictly courage and fear.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because well, even in your very early videos, um, I felt like you're already pretty sure of what you're doing. The level of confidence, that probably alignment is another word, but just how solid and fully expressed you are now is like a totally different level. Like if people want to go to your Instagram and scroll all the way down and see it, you can see it. But even at the very beginning, you could see that you're very sure of what you're doing already. But you evolved super fast. Like a few video,
Mhm.
you can see the evolution, the change. Ah, you blows my mind. I'm thinking, how am I moving
But
like a
I'm very
snail here so
devoted.
slow?
No, you know what though? It feels slow while you're in it. And I look back and honestly, I was just so devoted. I really wanted it, like, and I think there is this drive that when we connect to our drive and our bigger belief in what can be, we just become devoted to it. And I really did like cancel out distraction. I didn't watch TV. I didn't watch Netflix. I didn't, I literally was like, here's my practices. Here's what I do. I dove into all the trainings, like human design and coaching, emotional intelligence, personal power, like everything. I was like, oh, everything I ate up, my brain was eating up. So I was really programming my brain to match what my desire was and what my drive was. So again, when we think of alignment, everything was coming together to be a match for it
Mm.
in the evolution and in the process. So it was like, I think it really becomes, and even like looking at my lifestyle, and I had two kids, and then I was pregnant, and then I had my third, like I still remained devoted, and again, devoted to figuring it out my way. Like, how am I still going to do this while I have a baby? How am I still going to do this when I have all three kids home? How am I going to do this? And it was like, what's going to work for me? And I refused to do anything that doesn't work for me. So I had to make it work for me in like truth of what felt good.
How do we figure out what actually is my way? Because I find artists and creatives it's very well very easily influenced, and also
Mhm.
it probably is a mindset thing, like a limiting belief, just we are just not good at marketing and selling. We just want to do our thing. So how do we find what is my way?
You know what? Like, I really believe I believe it's just going to take practice. And I believe that we have to take off that construct, like that limitation where you said, like, it does need to be my way. Like, you can get influence, right? You have a
Yeah.
fully open head center. So like allowing that influence to come in and just trying it on for a little bit, like see how that feels. Do you like it? Do you feel confident with it? Does this work for you? If it
Mm.
doesn't, and it's really about dropping the shame and guilt of if it doesn't work, if you don't like it, who cares? Move on to the next thing, right? Like just
Yeah.
trust what you're lit up by and let that work. And as a creative too, you're going to come up with ideas that haven't been seen before. Can you trust that? Can you go with that? Can you do
Yeah.
it your way? Can you blend things? Can you make art out of it, right? Like let your process be true to you in your process, like you would creating art.
Okay. Yeah, when you say about dropping the shame and guilt, I think that is a big thing too. Probably especially for women. It's so easy to it seems like we try on the shame and guilt a lot. So every time we feel that, we have to be aware that we're feeling that, right? And then drop that feeling and choose the emotion that align with our vision of ourselves.
Totally. So, yeah, I mean, as women and then as mothers, on top of
Mm,
that, guilt and shame is literally embedded into our societal understanding of what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a mother. So, again, we're breaking these chains, right? We're literally deciding to break that story and that truth. So, when we look at it, we want to understand where it comes from. So, we fundamentally get the activation in our body, like where it's responding to and why. And then from there, we want to create what our pathway is going to be, even as mothers, for our children. What do we
mm,
want them to believe? What do we want them to see in action and practice, right?
yeah,
So we can start to develop our own reality of what we're passing down, and a layered effect. Like maybe they do believe the old way. Maybe they will, live in that paradigm. But here's another option for them to see.
yeah.
Can I be that option?
Yeah, because for me, a lot of things that I want to really make it work as an artist and as a mother, doing my way instead of seeking employment and all that kind of thing. Like I came from finance. I used to be in corporate banking, but that's not the thing that I want to choose. And as one motivation for me is to show my kids what is possible when you
Yeah.
actually follow your own heart. And that's why I'm figuring this out and I will figure this out. And that's my,
Yes,
yeah,
you
that's my
will. You will.
motivation. So Amy, for creatives or especially women, if they want to, come to your world, where do they start?
Yeah, so the best place would be really finding out what you are inside of your human design and getting a reading. So, a reading is going to be able to be customized to you so that you understand yourself. And we can really match where you're going, where you are, where you're going, and what's stopping you, and really kind of get to that core of what you can start to work on in a tangible way. And again, build in your awareness of who you are and what you're meant to do and be. And then from there, I mean, there's a multitude of spaces. So there's a lot of changes that are going on in my world right now, coming out
Yes.
into the new year. So you just really like, hopping in, finding the podcast, finding anything that lights you up and activates you, and just fully diving in. Like I just urge people that if like you get your toe wet and you're like, oh my gosh, this like feels good, like just jump into the pool. And that doesn't mean money all the time, but like again, get your brain like infused with all of this stuff. Like listen to it, put it in your ears, plug it in, read it. Like just get yourself on the path where you're like, this actually is enticing and it feels really right for me. Let's keep exploring.
So, okay, I think we probably should have asked this you earlier, but we just jump into the conversation. If someone what is human design? Like for people who have not heard of that term before, or probably heard of the term,
Mhm.
but never dive any deeper, can you explain to us like briefly what it is and what it can do for you?
Yeah, so human design is literally the GPS and the guidebook of your energetic DNA. So it's actually giving us the breakdown of who you're designed to be, how you're designed to operate, the systems in you that operate in an ongoing consistent way, and the aspects of you that are inconsistent. So when we
Mm,
start to understand this, we to understand how we operate as a soul being, how we operate inside of a society, how we understand ourselves, how we're trying to fit in through our conditioning, right? And our open centers, and then how we ultimately end up thriving. So it gives us the literally the guidebook of ourselves. It gives us the ins and outs of who we are and how we're meant to operate. When we can start to follow these operations, we start to feel our internal power. We start to understand ourselves and we start to show up in that authenticity, understanding that it's safe, it's okay, and we are certain about what has already felt right. When we enter into human design, everyone always says, like, oh, like I knew it, or oh, that makes so much sense because we are already
mm,
living our design. We're just not certain of it, and we
mm.
aren't allowing ourselves to understand and live it at the same time. So it really like literally tells you everything about yourself. And again, the pieces of you that are very consistent that we want to tap into, and then the pieces of you that are inconsistent that we want to decondition from, and that usually people are working out of when they're not meant to, which is what that leads to the burnout, exhaustion, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. yeah, when I found out human design, I was just like, wow, like I was wowed. Okay, so Amy,
Yeah, it's
thank you
mind
so much.
blowing. Your life will change.
Yes, I was like, oh wow, because it really explains so much. And like what you say, what is uh like the define center, what works for you and what really isn't you, but you always like somehow act that way. Um, but it's not right. And so yeah, it really makes so much sense. So Amy,
Yeah.
so just for people on the audio, can you tell us where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me primarily on Instagram at the Amy Elizabeth. There's also our human design page, which is at Aligned by Design HD. Also alignedbydesignhd.com. Facebook, Amy Elizabeth. Basically, if you look up Amy Elizabeth or Aligned by Design HD, you will find me and us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amy, and thank you so much for your program. It has really helped me a lot.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you, Lucy, for having me and for your art in the world and your bravery. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.